but I am going to tip them against the Broncos. Call me crazy. I feel like the Roosters get a win this week, and the Broncos, they've been flying high, yeah, but for me, their defense really isn't up to scratch, and I think they're running on a bit of fumes, especially in their edge back row spots. Sometimes I even dazzle and amaze myself. What's happening, guys? It's your boy Burgz back at it again for another week of tips and predictions here on The Casual Athlete, and I cannot wipe the smile off my face. In a week where there were a lot of 50-50 games, I managed to come away with 7 out of 8 tips correct. I can't believe it. Finally, we got one. Unfortunately, there was one game that I will speak about that cost me the perfect round. But guys, before we get into that, if you haven't already liked and subscribed to the channel, make sure that you do so. We bring out so much content each and every week, and download the TBC Live app. The link is in the description below. Now, guys, let's get into how I went last week. And as I said, I got 7 out of 8 tips correct. And those of you that watched the Thursday update, Last Minute Madness that I do with Longy, you will know that I did change a couple of tips from my Monday tips, guys. And one of them was on Friday night, the Dolphins getting the win, 1-12. And I just couldn't turn that upset down. It got me 5 points on TBC Live, where we are doing all of our tipping comps this year, where you can join in as well. And guys, there was a couple of ones that I had to change. I just saw too much from the Dolphins in the week prior to not go with them. And the Panthers, once again, fumbled the bag completely. Their completion rate is 13th best in the competition right now. They have previously, over the last 5 seasons, been a top 4 team in completion rate. That tells you everything you need to know about that game. St. George getting a win in Wollongong. That was a banger. Had to get that one as well. The Roosters was the big one, guys. That one got me 5 points. That Broncos team is way overrated right now, and I took the opportunity to back the Roosters, and didn't it pay some dividends big time. Thank you to the Roosters for getting me that win. It was bold, it was brave, but a lot of you in the comments gave me a lot of shtick for it, but I still stuck to my guns, and the Roosters came out on top, and they were impressive in that game. Sharks getting a win the long way round. Couldn't really find a groove, but they managed to get away with the win anyway. My Cowboys also did the deed over in Perth, and they've won 3 in a row now. There is definitely some consideration to me tipping them on a more regular basis based on the performances that they have shown. Parramatta is the team that cost me the perfect round, guys. I thought in Darwin the conditions wouldn't be good for the Raiders, but I got too big for my britches. I should have stopped at the Roosters upset, but I went with the Eels, guys, and it did cost me the perfect 8 out of 8. Damn, I'm really disappointed about that. But we move on. The Storm getting a win easily down at Amy Park. I thought that game would be a lot closer than it ended up being. They were in cruise control in that second half and managed to sit Hughes out for all of it as well. There may be some injury concerns about him. Fresh shoulder injury as well. So that is definitely concerning when tipping the Storm moving forward. And the Tigers, geez, they were dominant at McDonald Jones Stadium. I thought they'd get a win, yes, but I did not expect it to be as dominant a performance. And the Knights seriously need to work on their attack if they are to win any games moving forward. But those are my tips from last week, guys. The lowly Parramatta Eels are the only team that cost me last week. I will not be making that mistake again. But guys, we have a big round in round 7. It is Easter weekend, so let's get into round 7's tips. The first game of Easter weekend takes us to Four Pines Park, where the Manly Sea Eagles will be taking on the Dragons. Now, if you cast your minds back to last year at Easter, these two teams met, and the Dragons came up with a pretty impressive win in Wollongong, and that definitely came against the grain. I remember being very upset at the time by the Dragons winning, and the fact that Manly really just couldn't put away a Dragon side that was languishing at the bottom or towards the bottom of the ladder really stood out for me. In this game, they do get a couple of players back each side. We do have Lachlan Croker coming back into the side for Manly, so that it's very interesting to me to see what they do with Jazz Tavanga. And they are waiting still on Turbo to come back. He's due back in round 9, and Saab should also be back for this game. In my opinion, Manly weren't terrible last week. They just didn't have enough gas in the tank to be able to beat the Sharks over in Perth. And I think Lehigh Hopewadi is doing his best at fullback right now. He's nowhere near as good as people are hyping him up to be, but I do see a lot of potential there. And he is just a young guy thrust into a position that isn't necessarily his position to begin with, so he's still getting used to a fair few things. And the Dragons, for me, they were pretty good last week against the Titans. They outgained the Titans. They had more offloads than the Titans. They did miss more tackles, which is a little bit of a concern, but they seem destined to be this win-loss team that has zero consistency, and that was the case last year as well. I just want to see them string a couple of wins together, and I won't back them week to week until they do so. So, with that in mind, I'm going to back the Sea Eagles this week to get a pretty big win, 13 plus. The next game of the round is the game that no one wants to miss on Easter weekend. We have the Dogs taking on the Rabbitohs. Now, the Rabbitohs in this fixture on Easter weekend have won the last 6 games straight. You have to go back to 2017 as the last time that the Dogs beat the Rabbitohs on Easter weekend. And for mine, the Rabbitohs have been pretty impressive to start the season. They've won 4 out of their 6 games. And yes, the games have been close, but there's a grit and determination there to play for the full 80 minutes that wasn't present for the previous 2 years. And that has definitely been Wayne Bennett effect. You can see that the players want to play for the full 80 minutes and they don't give up, like they didn't give up against the Cowboys on the weekend. They could have put the Q in the rack, but they kept fighting and made it pretty close to finish the game. Had it not been for a Cowboys penalty goal, they were only 6 behind going into the latter stages of that game. And I think Latrell, in the 6 role, he was actually pretty good. Yes, he didn't have the kind of involvement that everyone would like him to have. He only had 6 runs for about 70 meters, but he still set up 2 of their tries, and the creativity from him is outstanding at times. I wonder if a move to 6 could actually be the key for him. He was pretty solid defensively, and as I said, that creativity spark is there, and with a genuine halfback next to him directing the team around the park, I think he could be even more damaging, and they do get that this week in the form of Lewis Dodd, who is set to make his NRL debut. For the Bulldogs, they come off the bye, and some teams can be genuinely scary coming off the bye with a week off, and the Dogs needed it more than some other teams, even though they are 5-0. They didn't have Burton, they didn't have Kickow, but it didn't matter in recent weeks. This Dogs team, they have so much similarities to the Penrith side that we've seen dominate the competition for the last 4 years. But I genuinely think if those players aren't there, i.e. Burton, Kickow, that South Sydney can win this game. They're playing the kind of football that you don't want to come up against, but so are the Dogs, and I really expect this to be quite a gritty, defensive game. I expect there to be a lot of fire in it. There might be a blow-up or two. There might be a sin bin or two. But I actually think South Sydney come away with a win here. Again, call me crazy, guys, but South Sydney have come up with some amazing victories this year, and I'm going to back them to do it again on Easter weekend and make it 7 straight on Easter. Let's go South Sydney, 1-12. Easter Friday continues at Suncorp, where we have the Dolphins taking on the Storm. Now, the Storm haven't lost to the Dolphins in their 2 seasons in the NRL, and they made it an absolute cakewalk against the Warriors last week, putting on 36 points in the first half of football. But Jarome Hughes picked up an injury, and I think we all know what their record is like without Jarome Hughes in the side, so that is one to keep an eye on. For the Dolphins, they were pretty impressive last week. I'm going to be completely honest. They took it to Penrith. I know Penrith haven't been great this year, but the Dolphins made sure of it on Thursday night. They tore apart Penrith's defense. They forced errors. They were genuinely up in the faces of this Penrith side, giving them no room to move. And I thought the hammer was outstanding, man. Like sometimes when he gets involved and he glides across, he's a beautiful football player to watch when he gets his hands on the footy and is in open space. Man, there's no better player to watch in the NRL, in my opinion, than the hammer in full flight. But coming into this game against the Storm, it's a massive test, and they probably would have wanted to get a couple more wins under their belt. before coming up against this Storm side. And the Storm, as we know, love playing at Suncorp. So unfortunately, guys, I'm going to be a bit boring and tip the Storm in this one. I do like what the Dolphins have been putting together the last couple of weeks. Just can't back them against the Storm. Let's go the Storm, 13 plus. We start Easter Saturday across the ditch at Go Media Stadium, where the Warriors will be taking on the Broncos. Now, both these teams had pretty underwhelming performances last week. The Warriors, first of all, 36 points in the first half. You cannot give that up to the Storm. I know Fisher Harris left the field very early on in the game, and he will be out for this one as well. A suspected torn pec for him, so that is almost season over at this point. And Nickel Klukstar also picked up an injury and did not come back as well. It's a bit dire for the Warriors. I love the team that they have. There's a couple of really good young players in the team. Halasima is a guy that I'd like to highlight, and I think he actually needs to be starting in some capacity. Not sure Capewell and Nia Corey are kind of giving the kind of oomph that they need in the back row spot. But Halasima seems to be the guy who runs so hard and has picked up a couple of tries in recent weeks just by competing on plays that he has no right to compete on. For the Broncos, geez, it was lackluster last week against the Roosters, wasn't it? And the Roosters aren't the best defensive team in the competition, but the Broncos kept coming up with nothing really and managed to score most of their points with a player in the sin bin for the Roosters as well. So that tells you everything that you need to know about last week's game for the Broncos. They struggled to score points, but they do get Ricky back this week. That should help their back row stocks. They are running low in that position as well. I think Adam Reynolds is a little bit banged up. And Reece Walsh, let's just touch on him for a moment. I'm not seeing him develop his game. And what I mean by that is I'm seeing the same player that I saw in 2023 who was electric. Like, let's not get that mixed up. He's a brilliant, brilliant attacking player, but he makes so many errors. And it's right when the team doesn't need it either. And his positional play is so questionable at times. It's really easy to exploit. And the Roosters did that last week. Hugo Savala kicked so brilliantly and it caught him out on a number of occasions. That is the area of Reece Walsh's game that isn't getting any better, or that I've not seen get better in the last couple of years. Yes, he's only 22, but he needs to be a well-rounded fullback. It can't just be flashy plays and, line breaks, cheeky passes and things like that. And, sometimes I just think he does it all for the cameras at times. Maybe that's just a bit of a personality clash between me and Reece Walsh. I just don't love the egotistical player that he is at times. And, it's not translating to good play and wins for them. He's been largely ineffective this year, and I think good players go through slumps, but this has been a reoccurring theme for the last 2 years. It's not getting better, and it needs to if the Broncos are to be a genuine force in this competition. Right now, I just consider them flat track bullies. And with Charnze Nicoll-Klokstad out, with Fisher Harris out, I will back the Broncos to get a win here in what will be, I think, a very high-scoring game, but I do think that the Broncos get a win. 13 plus. Well, here we are again. Easter Saturday continues with the Roosters taking on the Panthers at Allianz Stadium. And if we cast our minds back to just 1 month ago, the Panthers' streak over the Roosters was ended in a massively high-scoring affair where the Roosters came away with a very impressive victory at the time. In retrospect, that is starting to look like a win over a team languishing at the bottom of the ladder, fighting to get away from the wooden spoon right now. The concerning thing for me about Penrith is they're largely full strength at the moment, minus Jack Cole on the weekend, who we don't really know about his spot. Does he come back in for Blaze? They don't really have that many injuries outside of Brian To'o, and To'o is incredibly important for their start of sets. He gets them off to a great start, but even Brian To'o can't help what is happening to them at the moment. They are conceding 28 points a game right now. They've conceded 170 points in the first 5-6 rounds of football. That is almost, I think, halfway to the amount of points that they conceded last year, which was 390. Just let that sink in for a moment. They are terrible on the defensive side of the board. A position that they've held for so long. Like, they haven't changed anything about their defensive structure. And it's just getting completely exposed this year. Their attack is also dreadful. Like, they cannot get any quick movement happening. It all seems to be happening in slow motion. It looks dormant, ancient, in the back of the cupboard with a few dust particles on it right now. Like they're not getting anything happening, and it's showing to me that how important Luai was for their attack. His unpredictability, his fleet-footedness, genuinely held a lot of teams up to show what he could do with the ball. And Jack Cole and Blaise Talangi, they're finding it hard to transition into that. It's way more than concerning right now. It's at DEFCON 5 levels. No team has actually won the comp from a 1-5 record as well. So maybe we can put the red line through them at this stage. For the Roosters, I thought they were outstanding last week. Hugo Savala brought some youth, some virility to the side. He kicked really well, and they got away with a great win against the Broncos. They held the ball. They really beat the Broncos back into submission and just kicked the corners and chased really hard. It was a very simple game plan, but it worked. And if they stick to that this week and don't make as many errors again, then I can definitely see them winning this game. Do I stick, though, with that? And do I back the Panthers to turn it around? They've got to turn it around at some point. This champion side has to get on the board with another win at some point. And I think it will be this week. I just feel like Penrith can do it. There is the nucleus of a great side there. It has been there all season. They need to ignite it. Let's go Penrith, 1-12. Moving on to Sunday's games now, and the first one is the Titans taking on the Raiders at Cbus Super Stadium on the Gold Coast. Now, the Titans don't have a great record against the Raiders. They've only won 1 out of their last 10 games against them, but the last game between these two teams was decided by just a field goal, and the Raiders, they put on an absolute clinic against Parramatta on the weekend in Darwin. I thought for the first 15 minutes or so of the second half, though, they kind of lost their way a little bit. It wasn't looking like it was going to be a 50-point drubbing, but it ended up being so. I thought Ethan Strange was absolutely fantastic. And Hudson Young, again, I think we need to start talking about him potentially starting for New South Wales this season with, the lackluster performances from guys like Martin. The Roosters haven't been that great with Crichton. Yes, those guys stepped up in big games, but you need to go on form, and right now I think Hudson Young is in the top 3 second rowers in the competition right now. He is playing some outstanding football, and for the Titans, they have their worries. Like, again, they have this great side on paper, but it's not really transitioning to the field. I just feel like in Wollongong, they didn't really have many answers for the Dragons, even though they defended better, but it just comes back to the same question of, is this halves pairing the right one? And are they just waiting for Kieran Foran to come back so that he can give them a bit more direction? Because that seems to be what they need right now. I can't really tip the Titans in this game. I feel like the Raiders have the better side right now. They have more of a roll on. And I just feel like the record as well that they have over the Titans will come to play in this one. So I'm going to go the Raiders 1-12. The penultimate game of round 7 is the Knights taking on the Sharks at McDonald Jones Stadium. Now, the Knights have a pretty decent record against the Sharks. They've won 5 out of the last 10 games against them. And the Sharks, to be honest, haven't played the best football this season. They got away with a win last week. It wasn't a complete clinical performance. There's still a few issues, especially around Nicho Hynes' goal kicking. I think maybe he might need to give that up. But I'm not seeing the full 1-17 play to their fullest potential for the Sharks. And Adam Fanua-Blake has a bit of an injury cloud for this one, and that's a big blow for them considering they don't have Hamlin Uele also on the bench. So they're going to have to run a bit more of a lighter forward pack. Now, this helps the Knights quite a lot. The one thing that stops me, though, from tipping this Knights side is they cannot score points. They are averaging 9 points a game through the first 6 rounds of the season. That's their worst attacking start to a season since 1993. It's ridiculous how bad they are on the attacking side of the ball. There's zero inventiveness in the red zone. They look directionless. They've changed the halves again. I expect them to change the halves again this week. I tell you what they need. They need Dylan Lucas back into this side. When he was in there, he made some great charging runs. He was one of the form second rowers in the competition, has a great offload, has some speed as well because he can defend at centre. And that really offered a great outlet on the left-hand side for Ponga because right now he doesn't have that. Thomas can't. He's still learning his role. Dylan Lucas has been there for a couple of years now, so he knows what he needs to do. And he's such a determined guy if he comes back for this game. And when the Knights are backed into a corner, they tend to play some of their best football. And I don't see them losing 2 games in a row at home. Call me crazy. I'm going to back the Knights in this game to get a win against the Sharks. I don't like what I've seen from the Sharks to start this season. The Knights are a very gritty defensive team. Yes, they gave up 20 points last week, but I think that they can defend for long periods and it will frustrate the Sharks. The Sharks tend to get a little bit flustered when they can't score points. So let's go the Knights to get a win, 1-12. Okay, guys, final game of the round, and it takes place on Easter Monday, and it always takes place on Easter Monday. It is the West Tigers taking on the Parramatta Eels at CommBank Stadium. Now, the Tigers, what a performance it was last week on the defensive end. I did not think that they had that kind of defense in them. They basically shut out the Knights. Maybe not that hard to do, but considering that the team leading the competition, the Dogs, did it the week before, I got to think that the Tigers are just as good defensively, if not maybe a little bit behind the Dogs in the defensive department, and their attack was stellar. They took their opportunities when they needed to and really iced the game with a couple of great tries. On the Eels side of things, in Darwin, it was back to square one. They made a lot of really bad errors. They put themselves under pressure way too much and had to defend for long periods of the game in quite high humidity conditions, and that's something that you don't want to do. And I really thought the try on the stroke of half time really killed everything for the Eels. Like, they weren't going to come back from 24-6, but the 15 minutes after halftime were the best 15 minutes that they played in the game. And Dylan Brown, let's just touch on him for a moment. I like him. I think he's a pretty decent player. He's a great 5'8" in this competition. He's not a 7, so I don't know what the Knights are paying for, but in this game in Darwin, he had 4 runs for 50 metres. And on one of those runs, he scored a try. So, why didn't he continue to run the ball and try and threaten with his great footwork, or maybe find an outlet pass to someone? He's got a great offload as well. I just don't know why he didn't go to use more of that. He left it to Dean Hawkins to do a lot of the kicking. He made another error kicking it out on the full, putting them under pressure for that try before halftime. And the Eels, man, they just keep losing their way in games. And I think in this fixture, it generally goes the way of the upset. And we've seen in recent years, the Tigers have managed to snatch a couple. After a couple of years of struggle, they managed to snatch a couple on Easter Monday. But this Eels side, you'd be mad to tip them right now without Moses, without Lomax. I think Lomax might miss this game as well. I just can't do it with the Eels this week. I can't tip them. I would love to, and I'd love to be able to say there's some hope there, Eels fans. You can do it, but the Tigers are just too strong right now. So I've got to go the Tigers. 1-12. So that's it for this video, guys. Let me know what you think about my tips down in the comment section below. Please make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring out so much content each and every week. Make sure that you join our tipping comps over on TBC Live. The link is in the description below, and I'll catch you on the next one.